So I recently had a dream where Neville was involved, and I've had several dreams where Neville was involved, but I never shared them because I felt that they were pretty personal. I think I was too much in my own head as to how they would be perceived. But this dream I had, I wouldn't say it was the most emotionally impactful, but it was the one that really has made me contemplate on it for the past week. So I've had this dream, I haven't shared it because I really needed to think it through. It was a very interesting dream. And so the setting, I'll just give the setting. The setting is basically a large grassy field, and the blades of grass are like medium length. And there's like a giant bright light, kind of like in a circular form, but it's just a bright light. And around it, there's darkness. But this light is just, it's so bright. And it's casting a very dark shadow on the blades of grass. And I see Neville, and he's walking to the light. I see him looking at the light and walking to it. And I remember feeling like, oh, I gotta go talk to him. And I was semi-conscious, but I wouldn't say I was fully awake. And I felt, I guess what I mean by that is I felt like, if you ever feel like when you go in a dream, you feel like you join like a roller coaster, you're just like midway on the ride. That's kind of what this felt like, but I also was somewhat aware. And I ran up to him and I caught up to him and I said, I kind of felt like every time he appears in my dreams, he's always so busy. And I remember feeling kind of sad about that. Mentioned it. I said, Neville, every time I see, we're just walking. And I said, every time I see you in my dreams, you're always so busy. You never have any time for me. And what I felt, I said those words, but what I felt was more that in a sense, I did feel that. I was like, I put so much time into your work, and I felt like I really studied it, and I really take this so seriously, and I really believe in what you're teaching. Even the stuff that doesn't really make sense to me, I believe it. And I felt like I wanted him to be, in some sense, proud. I guess I wanted him to give me some form of validation. And he could feel that from me. And the moment I knew he felt it, because the moment he felt it, he turned around. He stopped looking at the light. He stopped, turned towards me, and he pulled out a letter. He puts his hand in his chest pocket. He had like a kind of a light jacket on. Pulled out a letter and gave it to me. And when he handed me the letter, I opened it, and it was just, all it said was, "Thank you." And I felt a deep, genuine thankfulness from him. And I had a lot of mixed emotions in this moment, because a part of me felt like I felt his thankfulness, but then this other part of me was very personal, because growing up, I had a very difficult life, and I would feel that I felt like a servant most of my life, to be honest. And whenever I felt like I did something that I was commanded to do and I was told thank you after, I never felt like the thank you was enough. I never felt like that thank you was at all fulfilling. I actually hated hearing thank you. I dreaded those words, because I felt like I'm only being thanked because I'm being obedient. And so those words were very personal to me. And then, so while I'm having all these emotions, I'm sort of wondering, well, what is it that I'm expecting Neville to give me? Like, why do I need so much from him? And I'm thinking of all of this. And then he turns around and just starts going towards the light again. And I remember just I looked at him, I looked up, and he was, I should say this, he was on my peripherals while I was reading the letter, which just said thank you. But I felt like I read it for a while because I was staring at it, contemplating on my emotions. He was kind of smiling he didn't show his teeth, but he was just gently smiling. And then he turned around and he went towards the light again. And that's when I put the letter in my pocket and I just started following him. And I woke up. That was the dream. And there were so many thoughts that I've had after. I just had so many emotional waves, and just a lot of mountains that I had to climb in my mind to really see what's going on. And so I shared the dream with a friend, and he thought it was beautiful. And then I shared it with my lovely partner, and she had an interesting take on it that really put into perspective the dream on a certain level. There's different levels to this dream. And on the one level, she pointed out, she said, "It seems like you wanted his validation so badly. It seems like the desire for Neville's validation was greater than the light, because you didn't even look at the light that he was looking at. And it almost seemed like you were consumed with fulfilling your little ego and fulfilling the little desires of it." And I really took that message to heart. And the more I thought about it, it was true. My desires were far greater. It totally exceeded. Um, my desires had my full attention, and I didn't have it on the light. And I think it's quite difficult because the dream really dissolved a lot of my self in a way, or at least what I thought was myself. I have been questioning a lot of my motives and been questioning what really I desire in life. I thought I wanted things, and now I don't know if I want them anymore. And so this dream really shook me because it did feel like my desires were so small, and yet I made them so big, where they completely had my entire attention. And yet Neville's attention wasn't on me, it was on the light. And I felt ignored by him. And I expressed my distress towards him. And yet I never even thought about the light. I never looked at it. I knew it was there, but I didn't care for it. I just wanted my desire to be fulfilled. I wanted my validation. I wanted my acceptance. And I'm so thankful that he gave me his own thankfulness, that, the idea that I was trying to make Neville proud, it's almost as if I think he lacks that feeling in him. So I want to give it to him so he can give it back to me. And the idea of me needing his validation so bad it really showed me how my desire there hasn't been fulfilled within myself. As I said before, that the things we want from others to give us are really the things we want to give ourselves. So I was really seeking my own validation, and yet I was looking to him to give it to me. And he didn't. He gave me his genuine thankfulness. And to be honest, I'm so glad he did that, because it dissolved this desire that I needed to be quenched. I felt like he just showed me, you don't need me to do that. You don't lack anything, is what I felt. And so her interpretation was very eye-opening for me. And it's really made me question what's important in life to a very strong degree. And I want to take it from another angle, because on the one hand, it's true that my desires had all my attention. It's also true that when I went back into the dream, I revised it, but I didn't necessarily change anything. I just took what she said seriously, and I instead looked at the light. So I went back in the dream, and when he was walking in front of me as I was following him, I revised it and looked at the light instead. And when I tell you, I felt a very profound feeling when I stared at this light. I felt a feeling of togetherness with Neville, like a deep connection. And which was odd because when I would look back at Neville, I felt very alone. I felt lonely. Yet when we both looked at the light, I felt together. And I just kept doing it back and forth. And when I stared at this light, I didn't have a single desire. And then I started to feel that we're looking at ourselves, that light is us. And that's why I feel together with it. I felt that I was looking at myself and I couldn't believe that I was a light. And then the more I thought about the dream, I remembered Neville's words saying that he always talks about how the scriptures are going to be fulfilled within you. And I take that seriously. I don't take it from a religious standpoint. I think it's a journey. And when I read the scriptures and it says that I'm the light of the world and that those who follow me will not be in darkness, will not walk in darkness. And then I find myself in a dream and I'm following Neville and we're going towards a light, and yet my desires blinded me. But yet I was still on the same course, but my desires did blind me. And when I read this character that Neville spoke so much about, Jesus Christ say that I'm the light of the world, I felt like within me, I found that light. And it's in all of us. It's in Neville, it's in me, it's in you. And yet, validation was more important. And I realized how much I've convinced myself that I desire things that I really don't have to desire. And we shouldn't desire things because we don't have to desire. And when people hear that, they think I'm telling them to just be homeless and, don't even wear shoes because, don't desire shoes. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that you don't have to live in desire. It's a freedom that is being offered here. And this light was only seen because I really believed in Neville's message. I believed in what he said. Even though I really didn't have evidence. He said, and this is really the message, that God became man so that man will become God. And if you take that message and accept it, it's a seed. It will plant itself within you. And you will be given these dreams. You will see Neville in your dreams as well. And you both will look at that light and you'll know you're looking at yourself. And in order to see myself as that light, I have to dissolve Edward. And even Edward, this is just an avatar. This is just a name I created. Everything that Edward is because I am. So if Edward is whatever, it's because that's really how I am. But Edward can't be without me. So why am I so concerned with, boasting and trying to puff up this Edward when Edward really isn't anything? It's just I created Edward. It's nothing without me. And that's how I felt about this light. Like, what are my desires compared to this light? And so this character that Neville talks about so much, called Jesus Christ, tells us how to use our inner ears and our inner eyes and our inner mouths, that we're told by this light to hear good news. That if it's, the saying says that, it's 4 months until harvest. And he says to wake up and use your eyes and see that the fields are ripe and ready for harvest. And this is not a one act. This is not something you just do one time. You don't just look to the world and say, oh, it's 4 months until harvest. Oh, well, I'm going to visualize that it's ripe one time. No, this is an everyday thing. This is an every moment to everything. You don't judge by the senses on any level. You're always seeing ripe harvest. You're always seeing your neighbor fulfilled. You're always seeing, it's an infinite power. You're always seeing them happy and joyful. You see yourself the way you want to see yourself. You don't allow yourself to fall into sin and desire inside yourself. That's really all sin is. And that this light came to forgive sin. And when I felt I'm I forced myself to merge with it. And I felt like I was that light itself. But in order for me to be that light, I'd have to get rid of this lowly being that I was inside myself. And now I understand why Neville was looking at it. I thought he was ignoring me, but he wasn't ignoring me at all. He was looking at himself. And then when I saw myself in that light, I felt together with him. I felt one with him. And this light is in everyone. It's the one cause. That's what it felt like. There was no darkness in this light. And that's what it tells us, that there's no darkness in God. It tells us that God's light. And what does William Blake say? That for those poor souls, God appears as light to those poor souls who dwell in night, but does the human form display to those who live in the realms of day. So you and I are living in the realms of day, and we display this human form, but we really are that light. And when God appears as light, it's because we're living in darkness. But that light is not found on the outside. It's not the sun in the sky. It's a light from within. And this light, you don't place it underneath a table. You don't place the lamp underneath the table. You let it shine. And I would say that it transforms you when you look at it. You don't judge it. You just look at it. And speaking of judgments, when you start to live and you start to live in this way of the imagination and you hear good news and you, regardless of what you heard, you hear with your inner ears good news, you speak wonderful things inside, because it's not what goes into the mouth that defiles a man, it's what comes out. And that voice is the inner voice. What comes out of that is what defiles a man. So it's not, so God is so intimate. This light, this being is in us. It sees everything. It doesn't judge after our senses. It doesn't really care about our senses, what I've learned. And I think I was so blinded by desiring all these things that I didn't even see my own sin. I was so concerned with fulfilling it instead of walking in that fulfillment, walking as if the harvest was already ripe. And so when you start following the teachings of imagination, which is to hear good news, to see the ripe harvest, when you start to follow this, you're following the ways of that light. You're following the ways of, right? And when Jesus says, if I'm your Lord, then follow my teachings. Well, that Lord is the light of the world that I saw. So I'm following its teachings that Neville laid out. But Neville really didn't lay it out because he was just reading the Bible as well. And it really has nothing to do with good or bad. It had nothing to do with it. Your judgments of good and evil should be gone. That is us using our imaginations to eat the fruit of good and evil, to judge whether things are right and wrong. It's not what we're here to do. It tells us that this light didn't come to judge the world or to condemn it, but to forgive it. So it's all good news. I didn't feel that light was embarrassed by me. I felt one with it. I didn't feel that by being one with it, I was bringing it down. And then I understood this is why Neville's looking at it. He's looking at God. He's looking at himself. But it's not done on the outside. There is no God on the outside. There is no God on the outside. It's within. And that's what this journey is all about. It's an inward journey. That's what William Blake said, although it appears without, it is within, in your own wonderful human imagination. And I don't say that to parrot Neville. I don't care to parrot. And to be honest, I feel like he's written so much and said so much. I just like to share it, what I learned from him. But I feel like he's laid out so much that I don't know how much more there is to add. I can maybe add my own way of saying it, but in the end, it's the same light that he saw that I was looking at. It's the same light that anybody saw when they speak of the light. And so I think that this message can be very practical because I used to think that you fulfill a desire and then you have another desire and you fulfill it. No, it's walking totally feeling fulfilled all the time. It's to practice the ways of that light. It doesn't see me, it sees me as himself. And then if you take it on a deeper level, well, who's having this dream? Who's the dreamer? Who's dreaming up Neville? And who's dreaming up the light? It's all me. And so I didn't feel that Neville was bringing that light down by making himself equal with it. I could tell Neville, just by the look in his eyes, I could tell that he was amazed by what he was looking at. His attention was so on it. And the only thing that stopped him was him feeling my distress. That was the only thing. But it only stopped it for a second. He turned right back around and started looking at that light again. And now seeing it from all these different angles, I was able to feel a connection instead of feeling lonely, as I did in the beginning of the dream. And I think that the war that we have within ourselves of this fighting between good and evil, it starts to cease. It goes away because you stop judging after the senses. You stop wondering if you're good or if you're bad. You instead eat on the tree of life, which is a desire fulfilled. You start eating on that tree. And the tree of life is Jesus Christ. It's the light. It's the same light I saw. That is the tree of life. And that's how we use our imaginations. So I didn't feel that any bit of what I've done here, as far as me writing on Neville's work and me talking about it, I don't feel that it gave me any more merit with God, with that being within me. I didn't feel like it, pat me on the head and said, you're better, you're good. I didn't feel any of that. I felt the same. I feel the same as anybody else. I don't think that you can gain merit with this thing. I don't think you do outward actions. so many times. I mean, there are people who live in gesture. They just want to do the gesture. They don't, but deep down they have a whole different thinking and speaking, and they think that they're fooling the thing on the outside. But yet it is God cannot be mocked. He hears every word you say inside. Because God is not on the outside, the cause is within. So there are people who just want to do the gesture. They just want to do what they think the right thing is. And some think they gain merit, as the Pharisees did in the scriptures. They gave their 10 leaves of mint. And they think they're gaining merit with God, but you don't gain merit. You're already one with it. There's a lot more to this that I need to look into, but I'm just sharing an experience I had. And I've had other dreams that I can share with Neville, but this one I wanted to share because I felt like it was relevant to everyone. I didn't feel that this was something very personal. I mean, even I had a personal element because it is my dream. It felt like it needed to be shared. And it felt like it was something that could free somebody. And I think that the way this works is that you have to accept that message that Neville gave. And I know his spiritual stuff can sound so boring. And take it from me, I was somebody who used to just skip all that stuff. I would just skim it, like, okay, cool, whatever he has to say. Yeah, but what about the law? Just being honest, that's how I was. But over the past maybe year and a half, I haven't wanted to know anything about the law. All I wanted to know was about the promise. That's all I wanted to know. And I think that famine that the scriptures speak of came upon me. I didn't really think I could be satisfied by anything. I felt like I was trading in a very temporal desire for that light. And then I started to understand how weird it looks to worship wood and stone. Imagine if you created a being and you're its creator, and it just decides to worship a tree, and you're kind of confused. You'd look at it very confused, like, I made you. Why are you worshiping the tree? And doesn't it tell us that this God's a jealous God, that he's going to get us all back? He says, what did the people in the scriptures turned away from God to worship these idols. And these idols, it says, are worthless. And by them worshiping these idols, they became worthless themselves, just like the idols they worship. So we become the things we worship. And if we worship useless wood, guess what we're going to be? Ourselves. But it doesn't judge you. It just tells you to come back. This God's jealous. He says, what did I do to you? Imagine this being the cause speaking. What did I do to you to find fault in me that you leave me? It even says that you're being a harlot and going to all these gods. Come back to me. And so I feel that this is a very important message that Neville gave. And I think it's not well understood because it sounds cryptic, but he's really just speaking about experiences that he had within himself. And I feel like I finally understand what he means. That we really are one. We are all that one being, that we're all going to eventually see that we are that light. And that light in us is us. And that light caused everything. And you're not going to bring it down by making yourself equal to it. You are equal to it. So I hope this message I hope you take it and you plant it in yourself. I hope you accept it. That God actually became you. That you may become God. So, and I don't say this to not use the law, but just learn to not desire so much. Learn to be fulfilled. I think what the dream showed me was that I was so used to desiring that I almost didn't know what I was if I wasn't desiring. I almost didn't know. I felt like my whole identity was wrapped around desiring. So who am I if I'm not desiring? So I hope that this message really reaches you in the depths of your being. I don't want it to reach the shallow parts. You're much deeper than you think. You're actually you are essential. You are essential to this. And we are all going to awake. But we're not going to awake. We're going to be totally transformed into that light. That is us. I don't know how else to share it, but that is us. So I want you to take this message and just learn the ways of imagination by not living in lack inside yourself. So whatever it is that you're wanting, just learn to ignore the senses and really walk feeling fulfilled. I don't care if someone says you don't have it or you're never going to have it. Just focus in on that light inside. Focus in on the inner world. Truly. Not as something that you do once here and there, but really live upon this. Like really test it. Really feel fulfilled. Try to go a whole day feeling fulfilled. The moment a desire comes, just fulfill it. Don't say 4 months until harvest. Don't say that inside. Don't feel that. But feel it's already ripe all the time. So you feel very abundant inside. But to be honest, it doesn't really matter if you live in desire or not. You are forgiven. That light is your essence of your being. So whether you use the imagination lovingly or unlovingly, it doesn't really matter. But life here is, really, this is death. This is darkness, really, but it's all flipped now. So you're going to need money and food here. So use your imagination wisely and feel that you're fulfilled in those areas, in all areas. Just be in that state. Learn to not be in the state of desire, even if you've habitually been desiring for so long I mean, my desire was so, my little desire was so big. I literally didn't care about the light in front of me that Neville was so interested in. So take it from me. You don't need to desire. You really dissolved all of it. To be honest, a lot of my desires almost seem silly when I think about it. But hey, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting something in this world. I think everybody does. But I don't view the world the same anymore. I really view it the way Neville viewed it. And I am having my own experience with it. Maybe I didn't have the direct experiences that he had, but mine, it's very similar. It's the same idea that this light that he talks about, you find it within yourself and really know that you're looking at yourself, that you are the light of the world. And I do not say this to make you egotistical or narcissistic. I really don't. That's not why I'm saying this. I mean it. I really mean that. You really are the light of the world. It's almost incredible, but he's right. It's true. I don't exactly know what happens from here, but all I know is that there is a way to live upon the imagination. As I said, to speak good words, to hear good news, to see good things. And that is the first act, is repentance. That's what we first should do. And then we believe that message that Neville gave. Just accept it. Just accept that you're the light of the world. Don't think, oh, maybe it'll happen tonight. Maybe you'll have a dream tonight, but don't seek for it in the world. The light is not out there. The more outward you go here, you're just losing sight. And so if you want to stop walking in darkness, go inward and just accept it. You don't have to, as Neville said, you don't have to feel arrogant about it. Just walk knowing that you are that. Ignore the senses and just walk, just as though you are it. So I hope you take this message and you accept it. I'm just sharing, as Neville said so often, from my own experience. And I want you to look at this thumbnail, and I want you to see how there's only one shadow, but two men staring at the light. That we really are one when we look at it. And so I invite you to look at yourself, to accept that is you. And I hope that you, like me, dissolve your desires. You dissolve this little ego, and you do not feel that you're underneath that light. And understand that this light doesn't care what you've done in the sense world, in this world. It doesn't care. It doesn't really matter what you've done. Now is a perfect time to assume something new. It doesn't matter. You are allowed to completely change right now because you are the cause of the person you are right now. You are the cause of the change inside you. So if you dislike a certain state you're in, and then you go to change your state, but you still feel the urge or the nagging voice of the old state, that old man is you. You keep it alive as much as you want it to be alive. You are allowed to completely be different if you want to be. You are allowed to stop desiring the thing you desire so badly. You are allowed to walk in fulfillment. And that is what it means to pray ceaselessly. That's what it means to be in prayer always. And so the greatest war, we have all these wars between countries, and we have so many wars in our lifetimes. And yet the greatest war of all is the war for God. It is between the false God and the true God. That is the greatest war. And that's within ourselves. It's greater than the war of good and evil within ourselves. As we have the the little, everyone knows about the little devil on your right shoulder, or I don't remember which one it is, but it's like the left shoulder is an angel and they whisper things in your ear. Well, that has a cause, and that cause is you. So the cause of good and evil is you. So you don't have to keep judging after those things and trying to figure all that out. You instead assume something new for you. And you don't need to do anything on the outside. All change and movement is in the inside. Just trust that. Really trust it. And really test that. Really have faith in yourself. Don't wait for someone to come to believe in you. Don't be like me waiting for Neville's approval. I should have given myself that approval. I should have given myself my own validation. That's what I should have done. And that's what I learned. And there was no harsh feelings or anything. It's all wiped away. I understood the message. I had a desire that I needed to be quenched, and it was quenched. But I found something way more than that. I understand why he stares at that light. So when the day comes and the war ends, you'll be left with that light. There won't be another God. And you'll see the cause of your good and evil inside yourself. And you'll stop eating off that tree. And you'll start truly seeing with your divine eyes. And you'll truly hear with your divine ears. And you'll speak with that divine mouth. It's when we take ownership, do we really take care of things? I mean, I've been in places where, I've seen people at parties where like they drop a beer and glass shatters and it's just a mess, but it's not their house, so they leave it. I've seen them, they just left. They're like, well, it's not my place. It's when we have ownership, do we really take care of things? And when you don't think you have the ownership of your own inner voice, your own thoughts, that you have the ownership of thoughts, that you have the ownership of your feelings, you have the ownership of your imagination, of your own inner ears and your eyes, that these are yours. The moment you accept ownership is when you really start to take care of it. When you really prune and you revise at the end of the night, you change it to what you want it to be. You plant a new seed for tomorrow. You really take care of your own garden. But it's only when you feel ownership. So you feel ownership over the things you desire. Feel ownership over your everything on the inside. Just feel total ownership of it. And then you'll do something about it naturally. So I know this video is longer than normal, and I don't mind doing these. It's just I needed to share this. This had to be said. And I waited because I wanted to say it in a way that I hope seeps in. Because no two people are going to hear me in this video the same way. You might even listen to this video multiple times, and then one day it's gonna click. And I hope it clicks. The moment you have those, really the eureka moments, but nobody uses that word anymore. When you have that moment where it clicks for you in my videos, understand why it clicked. Don't let that go. Pause the video or just pay attention to repeat why that freed you. Repeat it 3 days. What was it that freed me from this? And the moment it clicks again, do it again. Just contemplate on what frees you. It's all I do with Neville. I read him, and whatever I feel freeing, I accept it. And I just try to understand why that freed me. That's all I do. And when he was sharing the story of the gospel, the good news, through his lens, I felt something. I felt that click moment. And I've been writing about it for months, but this was the first time I had an experience. I've been journaling I've been talking about this light for so long in my own private journal, yet this is the first time I had an experience with it. I actually had an experience. And the experience did not take place on the outside. There's no savior coming. Give it up. There's no God coming to save us. It's on the inside. Don't reject that inner savior. It seems pointless. It seems useless. But then you gain everything. Because those who cling onto this life, this temporal life of death, those who cling on to this, they lose. They injure themselves. When you desire inside, you injure yourself. So I hope that this becomes spiritual and practical for you. And that you learn to not put so much importance on this life. And instead, put your focus on what Neville speaks about when he says that you are God. Really try to understand it. It is the thing that matters the most. And I hope that you too can see that you're that light as well. I hope that you have the same intensity that Neville had. And I hope you don't make your desires so big that you completely ignore this message, that I've been there as well, that you completely ignore the spiritual things because you need it to work. I've been there. But just entertain yourself with this idea. And I hope that you have the same drive and the same attention and intensity that Neville had. And if you made it this far, thank you for listening.